Welcome to the live stream. I do this live stream every weekend at the same time, and the format is I go over the two videos I've done this week, and then I basically bring up comments, some of the better comments, the more thought-provoking comments people have left, and I answer chat questions. So that's the format, and we're also on X if you want to follow along on there, and it's at Space Startup Hub. So I just post the videos I've done and maybe some replies and some different thoughts as well. So if you do have X, you can follow us on there. So let's get into the very first video this week I did, which is on the leaked report from Jared Isaacman on his plans for NASA. And he's got a lot of plans. There's a lot of things he wants to do to NASA, and one of the things is he wants to streamline NASA. He wants to reduce the time to science. He wants to use more commercial systems. He wants to ignite the orbital economy. He wants a bigger focus on human exploration, and also a big push for nuclear power. So there's a lot. So let's just go into the different areas. Stick myself in the corner here. Actually, it's better. I think it's better either way, like this. Okay, so streamline NASA. This is one of the big areas. NASA is very top heavy. There's a lot of managers, a lot of people with very long titles, and it doesn't really help getting things done. So he wants to eliminate the bureaucracy. He wants a flatter organizational structure. I mean, he's a billionaire. He's running, was it one of those finance companies or whatever. So he's got a lot of business experience, and I think he wants more doers and fewer managers. So it says here about reduced layers of leadership, committees, review boards, fewer managers, more doers, and then he wants to remove the unjustified expenses. And Marty's saying some good ideas, but will they survive the next election? Yes. Well, who knows? So anyway, so he wants to remove unjustified expenses, challenge budget, justification, and schedule of every program that is not a core NASA mission. NASA's obviously doing a lot of projects and programs, some of them not that important. So he wants more focus on the really important missions. So one of them is human exploration, which is, it's the Artemis program, back to the moon sustainably and then onto Mars. So he wants to accelerate the timeline for lunar landings. This is more a political objective, I say at the moment. It's geopolitical. China is about to land on the moon, maybe 2030, possibly 2029. So the US is also going back to the moon through the Artemis program. It has human landing systems. It has the SpaceX Starship. It has the Blue Origin Mark II, which is the crew. In fact, I've got a photo here. Sorry, I've got like a graphic. So you got on the left, you got the human landing system from SpaceX, and then you got the Mark II lunar lander, which is for crew. The problem is the Mark II is not going to be ready to beat the Chinese. It's going to be sometime in the 2030s. Blue Origin is also working on a Mark I, which will become important later, because Jared definitely has plans or ideas about how you could repurpose the Mark I, which is a cargo lander, to send humans. And this is just to beat China. That's all it is. Worth noting that he's committed to dual missions to Moon and Mars. I think there's going to be a big push on human exploration as a core mission. It's a core focus of NASA. And I think he wants to clear away the government programs, the SLS, and use commercial heavy lift and super heavy lift. There's some political pushback on that, of course, from Congress, but we'll see what happens. So accelerate timeline for lunar landings, get Artemis 2 to the pad and around the moon ahead of the current schedule. Artemis 2 is just the circumnavigation of the moon. So it just flies around the moon and comes back. It's a checkout mission for Orion and, Orion specifically, SLS has flown. Orion has flown, but not with with a life support system before. So this would be the very first time Orion is flying with a life support system, which when you have crew is kind of important. And I think I've said before, I'm kind of a bit nervous about Orion 2 because this is the very first time the life support has been tried. And once you burn towards the moon, you're not coming back for another week. So if there's any issues, then that's not great for the crew. So, but that's what we're doing. So then evaluate architecture after Artemis 3, crewed landing on the moon. So here it's very obvious he wants to just get rid of SLS and use commercial heavy lift. That is the New Glenn and the Starship vehicle. I mean that's what he means here. And then determine the safest and most affordable approach to routine deep space missions and chart a bold course for Mars. In terms of Mars, we have what he calls Project Olympus, which I've never heard of before. Olympus, I believe, is just a volcano on Mars. And NASA's Mars plan. And Christian is saying, I'm glad he is going to cancel all the NASA garage projects. A nonsense spending, good man. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of projects that it would make sense to cancel. So we'll see what he does. Of course, there's going to be pushback on that. But and it says here, immediately prepare uncrewed mission to Mars in 2026. So every just over 2 years, 26 months, the Moon and Mars line up, and that's the best time to send craft towards Mars. So the next window is in 2026. So he wants to send uncrewed vehicle, which is probably an uncrewed Starship vehicle, to Mars and just drop off some technology just to test it out before you send crew, which hopefully could be the next window or the window after that. So he's talking about landing infrastructure on Mars 2026 to accelerate tech for later crewed missions. Then he talks about a Mars Discovery Base contract with SpaceX. I have no clue what that is. That's the first time I've heard about a Mars Discovery Base. Is that some kind of outpost or something? I don't know. And then plans for in situ resource utilization on Mars. Obviously, that's very important for the Moon and Mars. Basically manufacturing, I don't know, oxygen and methane and whatever else can be manufactured. The more you can manufacture, the less you have to take with you and replenish. So that's his plan. And what else do we have? We have what he calls an engineering strike team. So first of all, he's going to have a few people, very technical, proficient people, engineers, and they're going to look at all the different NASA projects. Top of the list, I think, is Artemis 2, then 3. Safety concerns, so heat shield and engines. The heat shield had some problems on the Orion vehicle. It kind of flaked off, or parts of it flaked off, which is bad. They never really got to the bottom of it. For Artemis 2, they're just gonna fly at like a low angle, like a less steep angle, and hopefully that will help. So they haven't really got to the bottom of what's happening with the heat shield, which is not great, really. And then Marty's saying Mars Discovery Base contract sounds like more money for Elon. I think it's going to be SpaceX. I don't see who else can do much in a quick time frame. And Christian saying, is that Project Olympus going to be done with cooperation with Elon Musk? Yeah, I don't see how it could be anyone else. I mean, they have the Starship vehicle, which is designed specifically for Mars. So, I mean, I'm sure you'll have New Glenn, you'll have Rocket Lab helping with Mars because they're working on the Mars Telecommunications Orbiter, the MTO. There's probably $1 billion contract for that at some point. So definitely Lockheed Martin, Blue Origin, and Rocket Lab are very interested in getting that contract. They've got glossy videos out about the MTO. But in terms of actually landing on Mars with cargo, substantial cargo, I think it's going to be SpaceX, right? I don't see anyone else. And then we have Kako Geneticist saying, I think there's a reasonable good chance Isaacman would be kept on regardless of which party takes the White House next. Well, hopefully. I mean, the plans seem very good to me, and you know, he's we'll see how he does. I mean, I'm not sure about how good he is with the politics, because obviously you have to deal with a lot of politicians, and if they don't like what you say, but anyway, we'll see what happens on that. Another big push is the nuclear propulsion. There's quite a lot in the report about that. He wants to basically pivot SLS money after Artemis 3. We're talking billions and billions. Pivot it towards nuclear propulsion. Some of the NASA centers can be repurposed to do nuclear testing, nuclear integration. The idea is that the government will own this nuclear system. You'll get components, thrusters, and so on from the commercial sector. Then NASA will integrate it and test it and deploy it and operate it. And one of the reasons is it bypasses a lot of regulations and so on that the commercial sector would have if the government just does it. So it's just quicker if the government does it. And I think that's the thinking behind that. So nuclear is a big push there. There's also, as we just said, he wants the Mars base, Mars Discovery contract, which will be SpaceX initially, but you'll have all the other companies involved somehow. And then obviously big push towards the moon with a landing with a nuclear power plant on the moon by 2030. So you'll have fission surface power and also nuclear electric propulsion for nuclear. And he does say that there's a trade-off between, you know, you've got nuclear electric propulsion, which is basically ion thrusters powered by a nuclear reactor, or you could have nuclear thermal propulsion, which is just hydrogen gas, which you shoot out. That gives you very high thrust. But I think he wants nuclear electric propulsion. Focus on that. It gives you a lot of electrical power, which is great for the moon and Mars. You can also use it for propulsion. So that's the big push, I believe. And also, it's very great. It's very good for the outer planets. You've got a lot of these planets, which right now you can only get to with a gravity assist, which for the outer planets doesn't happen very often. But with nuclear propulsion, you just go directly to the planets because you have the amount of power and thrust you need. So for the outer planets, nuclear propulsion is brilliant. It's the best way. So anyway, that is what he was saying. Okay, so have I covered that? I've covered, yeah. It's basically he wants to help the orbital economy. So that's commercial stations, space stations. He wants science, more science, and quicker science and cheaper science. So he calls it reduce the time to science. So that's perhaps using commercial satellite bus platforms, using more commercial rocket launchers, bulk buying launches, bulk buying satellite buses, and yeah, just using the commercial sector more. And so he wants to ignite the orbital economy, commercial space stations. He wants to streamline NASA, look at all the NASA centers. Do we need all of them? Can we combine them, or can we repurpose them? And yeah, human exploration and the nuclear push, I would say, is the main areas. So what have I brought this up before? Would be interesting if he stayed. It is tradition for NASA heads to resign when new administration is elected. I wouldn't mind Jim Bridenstine staying on, actually. I thought he was quite a good NASA leader. But anyway, so let's have a look at the comments. Radical plan to overhaul NASA. So we have, I'll put myself in the corner at the moment here. So Anthony Hunt is saying, after all the work put into Orion, they should retain it and consider New Glenn as a possible booster alternative. Never returning good. That's a nuclear rocket. Great channel you have, my friend. Thank you very much. Yeah, New Glenn. I think I'm going to do a video on Blue Origin. Cover the new 9-4 rocket that can lift 71 tons. And also I want to cover the alternative architecture to landing crew on the moon using New Glenn and Mark 1. It can be done. And I don't think it's a great plan, and it's only to beat China. Obviously, the Mark II is designed for humans, but I'll go over that next week, I think, in a video. So Wayne's World is saying, Jared has obviously put a lot of thought into this. At first, the direction seems odd, but later on it came together. It's a solid, workable plan, as long as Jared can effectively restructure NASA. Restructuring government agencies can be a slow and difficult process. It requires exceptional management skills, which I'm not qualified to comment on. I know a bit about management, but not of organizations. I hope they confirm he has a vision that's workable. Yeah, I think he's got a great vision. I think it really will help the commercial sector and space startups a lot. I think it will boost human exploration. I'm all for the nuclear propulsion. It makes a lot of sense to me, but it will require billions and billions and billions of dollars. But he can get that from SLS. If he can pivot the SLS money towards nuclear propulsion, and the NASA centers can be repurposed to test nuclear, then I think everyone's happy. The politicians, like, the money still goes to the center. They still have all the jobs. They're just doing nuclear propulsion. So I think that's his plan. And John Stewart is saying NASA needs Jared the businessman and Jared the astronaut. That's it. It's not just a businessman. He flies planes. He owns a company that flies planes. He's been to space. So I think he's perfectly qualified to do the job. And Jean Claude is saying, at this point, The Expanse is slowly turning into a documentary. It's kind of looking a bit that way. And I don't know if you noticed in the report or in the video, he mentions Astroforge, which is an asteroid mining company, which is kind of very niche and small. I've done a video on them, but I was surprised that popped up in the NASA report. So he's obviously aware of all those small commercial space startups, and that's very promising as well. So let's put myself, nope, I want to put myself here. Okay, so Chris, well, I'll just say Chris, I won't say the rest of the name. Jared is on the right track. NASA should be converting to a role where more is done with commercial sources instead of the bloated, hyper-expensive projects of the federal government. Oh yeah, one thing he says in the report is cost-plus contracts are prohibited without a waiver from the NASA administrator. So no more cost-plus, that's gone, which is fantastic. He goes on to say, NASA should be helping to develop the technology of the future and help commercial companies to implement this new tech into more advanced methods for travel to the moon, Mars, and beyond. Yeah, I think NASA gets it. It's let's use commercial sector as much as possible. Let's transition from ISS to commercial space stations. Let's use commercial companies for science and to help with science and for human exploration, and even to help with the nuclear propulsion. So the actual system will be integrated by NASA, but a lot of the components for the nuclear system will be from commercial companies. Another company he mentions in his report is Antares, which are building micro nuclear reactors. So that's great as well. So he's fully aware of the commercial companies for nuclear and so on. So that's good news. And we also have Tiberius Maximus saying, action, not committees. God, I love this man already. So many bloody VPs. Yeah. So I think that's true. There's a lot of, you have a look at the NASA titles. They're just VP of this and Deputy Administrator of that. I think they're going away. He's suspending all those Deputy Associate titles. So I think a lot of those people actually have to do some work, and because they can't go to board meetings or committees because he's suspending all of those as well. So unless they can do something practical, he wants the managers in the trenches. As I think he says in the report, he doesn't want them on pedestals. They have to be in the trenches. And he wants NASA to be the hardest place in the federal government to work, the most intense and difficult place. Which sounds good to me. It means he wants people to work really, really hard. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's the first video. I think I've covered that. So let's move on to the second video. And so Elon's been tweeting over the last month or so various tweets about his plan, and this is a new plan from him. I've not heard about before, that he wants to put the data center into space. And that's because basically he's realized when you do the math, and he says he's done the math, you can't scale on Earth. The problem is you just can't get the electrical power you need. And without the electrical power, you can't train AI models. So you're not going to be competitive. So at least in the US, and I think this is the case just everywhere, the amount of power you need is just astronomical. It's just hundreds and hundreds of gigawatts of electrical power, which is just not possible on Earth. And therefore, you have to go into space. You have to have orbiting data centers. And I think all the tech companies are realizing this. It's not just Elon. With SpaceX, it's Google. The Google CEO talks about orbiting data centers in every interview he does. You've obviously got OpenAI that we're talking to Stoke Space, which I think has fell through now. But you've also got Eric Schmidt from Relativity Space. One of the reasons he put so much money into that company and became the CEO, I think, is to have orbiting data centers. Axiom is also working now on that. You've got StarCloud. So everyone, I think, is now realizing slowly that you can't scale on Earth, and therefore you have to go into space. So we have light switches saying Starship will bring tons of mass to the moon, including robots to assemble moon base, while Optimus is progressing. So I think you'll see Optimus on the moon and Mars. That would make sense to me. And also the Lunar Gateway. I didn't really mention Lunar Gateway, but I think Jared wants to repurpose that into something else. He wants a simplified architecture for getting to the moon, and Lunar Gateway is unnecessary. There's simpler ways that don't require the Lunar Gateway, so I think that's going to disappear, to be honest. And and also Light Switch is saying, when is Tenacity flying? Tenacity is Sierra Space's Dream Chaser. I think Dream Chaser, Sierra Space, is in a lot of trouble because they've now been removed. Their flight to the ISS has now been removed. So what is it for? I don't think they have any customers. They're not going to the International Space Station. So I think they're in a lot of trouble. That's my personal opinion. I think Eric Berger agrees as well. He said Dream Chaser is not flying anytime soon. And then we have Kako Geneticist saying, wouldn't you need much lighter fission reactors for nuclear electric propulsion than any that have been built? Yes. But Antares, for instance, is working on micro nuclear reactors, which are quite small and lightweight. They've been making some progress already. And there's other companies. For instance, Intuitive Machines, the CEO and founder is, I think, Cam Gaffaranian. He also is the CEO of X Energy, which works on micronuclear reactors. So definitely expect some kind of proposal from Intuitive Machines on nuclear reactors. And you've got other companies as well. You've got Westinghouse, probably Lockheed Martin, Rolls-Royce, all of them working on these SMRs, or small modular reactors. So I'm sure they would propose some kind of micronuclear reactor system, I believe. So, okay, I'm up to date on the chat. So let's have a look at this slide. So Elon Musk orbiting AI satellite vision. So this is basically from various tweets he's made over the last month. So Starship to deliver 300 to 500 gigawatts per year. So gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. So a nuclear reactor is normally what, a few gigawatts? I mean, 1 to 5, maybe 5 to 10, but quite small. So that's a nuclear reactor. So 300 to 500 gigawatts is a massive amount of power. It's equivalent to the whole US electricity grid. So 300 to 500 gigawatts per year is the entire US electrical power grid in space every year, year after year after year. This is the scale he's thinking about. And also we have Light Switch saying, Intuitive Machines 0 for 2 with moon landings why. They kind of landed, but the first time the leg kind of snapped. So I think they just came in a little too fast. The second one, they landed in a crater. So I don't know if you want to say that's software algorithm, hazard avoidance software. I think they're getting there. They're just working their way up the learning curve. They've got IM3 and IM4, so I think they're going to figure it out. I'm quite positive about intuitive machines. They have a lot of money now. They got a lot of NASA contracts, so I think they'll figure it out eventually. So average US electricity consumption is 500 gigawatts. So AI in space exceeds the entire US economy in 2 years. Every 2 years, the whole US electricity grid is basically put into space. Tonnage to orbit solved by Starship. That's 100 tons, potentially moving to 150 tons every single launch, fully reusable system. So in red, chip production is a problem. This is the big bottleneck. It's not going to be mass to orbit. It's going to be chip production. You have to produce enormous amount of AI chips because he wants to launch millions, literally millions of satellites into space. So you have to produce a lot of chips for that. And in brackets, solved by Tesla Terafab. This is a new factory that he's building, plans to build, and produce literally millions of AI chips. And scaled to 100 terawatts. A terawatt is 1,000 gigawatts, so 1,000,000 megawatts. So he wants to scale to 100 terawatts per year using the moon's resources. So this is on an absolutely massive scale. Basically, factories on the moon that are churning through billions of tons of regolith, producing chips and satellite components, and then using an electromagnetic railgun to accelerate them to lunar escape velocity. That's his plan. So we have Christian saying, sell the ISS to China to be refurbished for space storage. Well, that's the plan, I guess. I think China's got their own space station, and Tianguang, or whatever it's called, the Heavenly Palace. So I think they're happy just building on that. But the thing is with the International Space Station, they've looked at all the different plans, and like a graveyard orbit or whatever, they've decided the safest thing is just to splash it into the ocean. So they have a US deorbit vehicle. It's a SpaceX vehicle, and they're paying $800 million for that vehicle to just deorbit it and just send it into the Pacific Ocean. So that's the plan at the moment. So here's how Elon plan works. The AI satellites in low latency sun synchronous orbit is also mentioned high Earth orbit. Basically, you want to be in the sun 24/7. If you're too close to the sun, you're in a low Earth orbit, you go into a shadow too often. And for these kind of satellites, they always have to be able to see the sun. So you want to be quite high. Another advantage of being high is you avoid all of the orbital debris. It's mostly in the low Earth orbit. So if you're higher, you avoid all that. The chance of being hit is several orders of magnitude lower if you're in high Earth orbit. So we're talking 20,000 kilometers, as opposed to low Earth orbit, which is what, 500, 800. Lowest AI bit stream in under 3 years. So Elon reckons, and he's done the math, that if you do the calculations, it's actually cheaper to do AI compute in space in less than 3 years. And he wants a megaton, that's 1 million tons per year of satellites. So literally, it's around about 500,000 to 1 million satellites, because each Starlink satellite is going to be around 2 tons. They're quite big. They'll have a lot of solar panels, a lot of radiators. So we're talking like a 2-ton satellite. So 1 million tons is probably 500,000 to 1 million satellites. But then if you're talking 300, 500 gigawatts, it could be several million satellites per year, every year. And so 100 kilowatt per satellite yielding 100 gigawatt of AI compute per year. So each satellite is, and actually there's a graphic here. So this is Starlink version 1.5, 2, and 3. So he's thinking of repurposing the version 3 which goes into mass production at the end of 2026, I think. This is a 20 kilowatt satellite, but he says there's no problem making it 100 kilowatt. You just add more solar panels, you add more radiators to the back of the satellite, and you basically strip out all the phased array antennas, which are very bulky, use a lot of energy, and are heavy. You strip them out and you put in the AI compute. And yeah, a ton more solar panels and radiators. And he said it's easier, not harder than a version 3 Starlink. So there's no issue with the satellite. The issue will just be with the chip fabrication, I believe. And he says, no operation or maintenance costs. Once you put the satellite in space, there's no maintenance. Basically, your energy is free from the sun. Your cooling is free from the vacuum of space. So it's cheaper. And AI satellites linked with high bandwidth optical laser links. So Starlink satellites already come with high bandwidth laser links. So you just keep those. You have the Starlink network. So the AI satellites just communicate directly with Starlink. So a lot of what he needs is already in space, operational, or the tech's been developed already. The key thing is the chip fabrication. And we have a graphic here of this is electricity generation going from 1999 to 2020. 460, over 25 years, the US has not produced any more electricity. It just doesn't build power stations. So there's no way you can scale on Earth, at least not in the US. And this is also the case in Western Europe. You can't scale because you can't produce enough electricity. Without electricity, you can't build the AI models. And here's a graphic of what's needed, the kind of electricity usage you need to train the models. And you just look at the line. It's exponential. It's exponential increase in electricity. So you have to go into space to scale. There's just no way around it. And David is saying, have you heard of the company K2 Space? They are making even bigger satellites. Yes, I did a video on them. And interestingly, Jared also has heard of them. In his key contacts for nuclear propulsion, he mentions K2, which I thought was very interesting because what that tells me, his thinking is use some kind of K2 space platform, which is a very big satellite bus. We're talking 5 meters. They have the mega class and then they have a giga class, which would have to launch on a Starship vehicle. So this is like a 5-meter satellite bus. It can have a lot of power. And I think he's thinking that plus a micro nuclear reactor. So yes, K2 Space I've heard of. I've done a video on them. And more importantly, Jared has heard about them as well. So yes. And we have a comment here from Light Switches. I saw Axiom Space Station model at the Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Can't wait to see it go up on Starship. Yeah, they've got a number of modules they're working on, including a observation window, a cupola, which looks amazing. The windows will be very big and you'll have a fantastic view. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. They're also working on a data center module as well. So that's okay. Am I up to date? Yes, I'm up to date on the chat. So that's where we are with Elon's plans for AI satellites. And of course, it won't just be Elon. I mean, everyone will do the same calculations. The physics are the same for Google and for Microsoft and for all the other tech companies. They will all eventually have to go to space, which is fantastic news for the space sector because suddenly all the rocket launch companies will have lots and lots of customers because you'll have to launch thousands and then tens of thousands and then millions of satellites, AI satellites into space. And we have, I have this video just so you can visualize the Starlink network. These are all Starlink satellites you can see. And yeah, it's Starlink satellite constellation is 9,000 satellites in orbit at the moment. And Elon wants to put millions of satellites into orbit every single year. So, and we have Light Switch saying, Jeff is running out of time to launch his LEO sats before he loses his license. They've already launched Kuiper, I think. There's one, wasn't there one mission? Vulcan Centaur and New Glenn are basically he's launching on Vulcan Centaur, he's launching on New Glenn and also Ariane 6. He's booked flights for Kuiper. I think they've flown some Kuiper satellites already, so I think he's okay. But yeah, obviously he needs to accelerate that. And this is another thing for AI companies, they need to launch. And already a lot of the satellites are already launching, either launching Starlink or Kuiper. They've already booked a lot of flights. So I think if you're an AI company, a tech company, you're kind of panicking now, like who can launch my satellites? So you're going to be looking at Rocket Lab for sure with Neutron. You're going to be looking at Relativity Space, Stoke Space, and maybe some of the European companies like PLD Space, ISA Aerospace, Orbex, InnoSpace from South Korea. I think you're looking now for who's going to launch my satellites. So anyway, so Elon's space-based AI vision comments, and Lightswitch is saying, look up the timeline. Yeah, I don't know how many satellites they have to launch to keep their license, but I definitely think they booked a lot of flights already, and and I think there's Kuiper satellites in orbit already. So let's see here. We have Ripping Bag saying, seems like larger satellites in high polar orbits would be the way forward. Larger so you get more compute per satellite. High polar orbit so you get away from much space junk as possible. And polar so you have 100% sunlight. Radiation is probably a major concern for all this, however. Seems like Elon likes scaling up his current satellite constellation though, so what do I know? Oh yeah, Falcon 9 has launched 2 batches of Kuiper already. Yes, yeah, I mean that's kind of interesting. They launched Kuiper on Falcon 9, but yeah, that's great. So I think Kuiper will definitely be a competitor to Starlink. They're just obviously a long way behind. And yeah, in terms of what Ripping Bag is saying, there's various different orbits. I think high Earth orbit is probably one of the best orbits, 20,000 kilometers. The good reason you go there is you avoid a lot of the orbital debris. There's 10 to 100 times less likely to be hit by orbital debris if you're in high Earth orbit. You see the sun most of the time, but as Ripping Bag says, radiation is a problem. It's going to be more intense up there, but you can handle that. You know, the challenges are manageable, which is orbital debris and radiation, but the advantages outweigh any disadvantages. So we have Lars Eric Stride saying, what about the radiation in space and maintenance, space debris? So much seems way harder to do in space. The only plus is better solar power, the better solution to improve grid power. Many companies want that. I just don't think you can scale on Earth. You saw this graph. I'll bring it up again. The flat line is electricity generation in the US over the last 25 years. It's flat, and it needs to look like this. The electricity demand for AI is exponential, and the power generation is flat. So I don't think there's any other option to go to space. You just have to. In terms of radiation, it's a challenge. In terms of space debris, it's a challenge, but you can mitigate against that. You use a radiation-hardened hardware, and for orbital debris, you choose your orbit very carefully. And we have Lightswitch saying, radiation going to Mars and staying for 2 years is going to be fatal. I disagree with that. I need to do a video on radiation because I think NASA's model for radiation is just wrong. It's a linear model. It basically says there's no safe dose of radiation. It has to be as low as possible, and it's called the ALARA principle, as low as reasonably possible or something. But it's linear model for radiation, which I think is just wrong, and it's a very old model from the 1950s, and it's really going to harm crewed missions to Mars because astronauts are limited to, I think, 600 microsieverts of radiation for the entire career. So NASA will always choose a very short duration mission to Mars because of radiation. But I think their model is wrong. But anyway, I need to do a video on that. It's definitely worth talking about, and it does impact Mars. But anyway, that's a different video. So we have the Orion's arm saying at 20 kilowatt per satellite, you need 15 million of them for 300 gigawatts of power. I see that most of Mars is still at the gut feeling level. I mean, you're not wrong. You need millions of satellites. The lowest possible number of satellites is 500,000. 1 million tons with a 2-ton satellite is 500,000. But he's talking 300, 500 gigawatts, so it's definitely millions, and it's millions per year. But if you think about Starship, it's a fully reusable and rapidly reusable system. You know, the booster lands back on the landing pad within 5 or 6 minutes, and you do an inspection, you refuel it, it flies again. The Starship vehicle is again fully reusable. So if you launch 3 times a day, and there's 365 days in a year. That's 1,000 launches at 100 tons. You can do the math. That's 100,000 tons from one Starship launching 3 times a day, and there will be many, many Starships. So you can easily get to 1 million tons. So I looked up other modes of transport. How much do they transfer? How much do they move around? Marine shipping, it's hundreds of billions of tons a year. Road and rail is billions of tons. Even air freight is hundreds of millions of tons through air freight. So 1 million tons a year isn't really a lot for a transportation system. It's just a lot for space at the moment. But with a fully reusable system that basically you can turn around like an aircraft, 1 million tons is certainly possible. How many killer satellites do you think are in orbit right now? I don't know, but obviously with Golden Dome, there's going to be a lot more in the next couple of years. There's going to be a big push to put those kind of satellites into orbit from the US, and you know that Russia and China is doing the same. So okay, where were we here? So David Tremblay saying suddenly there's a lunar economy. This is another video I want to do. Is what are the second order effects of Elon's plan, especially towards the moon? He's talking about processing billions, probably tens to hundreds of billions of regolith per year. So there's going to be infrastructure spillover. He's going to have to build roads, landing pads, communication, mobility, power, electromagnetic railguns. There's going to be a lot of spillover for other companies. It's going to be fantastic for space sector, for human exploration, for the moon, and so on. So that's a separate video. And Yard Bird is saying, Yard Birdify, the sun also heats and radiators aren't free. Cooling the things might be more of a challenge than you think. It's just a matter of radiators are mechanically very simple. Like they're very simple compared to what SpaceX has done already. It's just the bulky. They're quite massive. But Starship is coming along. So I think radiators are simple to do. You just need a lot of them. And if I can just remove myself for the moment, we have Marty the Martian saying, to go full Kardashev level 2 would require the construction of full Dyson swarm. Though doable, it is far beyond Musk capabilities. Even with Starship, it would require a lunar space elevator and several centuries at least. So, where have I gone? Here I am. I don't think you can go full K2, but even if he goes a little towards K2, that's still massive for space and for the moon and for cislunar economy. So it's very, very positive for space startups and space companies. And it won't just be Elon, it will be all the tech companies putting billions and billions of dollars into the space sector. So it's very, very bullish and very positive if it happens. And Light Switch is saying, was at Starship last month, was impressive. I can imagine It's impressive. And there's going to be 2 pads there soon. One pad is almost operational, another one's been upgraded. There's going to be 2 or 3 pads at Cape Canaveral. You're going to have a lot of pads, a lot of Starship soon. So the future is looking very positive. And one thing I want to do, I actually want to do a tier list. If I can bring it up, share the tab. And I'm going to do a tier list on NASA's goals. And there it is. There it is. Bring it up on the screen. And let me just switch over now. I put myself in the corner. Okay. So this tier list is just my where I would rank the goals for NASA. So there's various different kind of goals you can work on. You can focus on Mars. You can focus on the moon. You can focus on science, on cislunar economy, on nuclear propulsion, or whatever. So this is just where I would put the goals in terms of like ranking them. So if you're not familiar, S tier is like the top tier. It's like number 1, and then you've got A, B, C, D, E. So I'm going to put human exploration as S tier personally, and this is because I think human exploration just drives everything else. It drives science. It drives technology development, because to land humans on the moon, you need a big system that can land 20 tons at least, and up to 100 tons with Starship. You can bring back a lot of moon rocks, so that's great for science, and there's a lot of technology development you have to do. So I think human exploration drives everything else. So to me, that's S tier. That is the most important thing to do. And we have from chat, we have Azar saying, do you think other providers are going to look into argon-based thrusters, looking at how the Starlink version 3 goes? Yeah, I mean, basically it's using a heavy inert gas. You got krypton, you got xenon, you got argon. So it's just a trade-off between which is the best to use. Yeah, so I think obviously Starlink version 3 is going to be very sophisticated piece of technology and satellite. And as Elon says, making it into an AI satellite is actually easier, not harder, which is kind of interesting. And then Marty is saying, I'm sure we are excited for first Starship catch, a New Glenn relaunch. Exciting stuff into absolutely 2026. I think it's going to be amazing for space. And yeah, seeing the New Glenn come back the first stage and be repurposed, that's amazing. You had the Falcon first stage, and then you had the New Glenn appear alongside the dock. So that's just fantastic. And we're going to have Neutron next year, hopefully. We're going to have quite a few of the European launch companies, PLD Space, ISA Aerospace. We're going to have Stoke Space flying, maybe, Relativity Space. So there's a lot of activity. And if the tech companies come into space as well, that's just going to accelerate everything. So in terms of nuclear propulsion, I'm going to put that down like a B. I think it's important, but I think it's a longer time period. It's 5 to 10 years. I think you're going to have fission surface power first, definitely for the moon. I think it's also essential for Mars. I don't think you can have a Mars base without nuclear power. Not with the dust storms. You have to have nuclear power for Mars. So nuclear propulsion, nuclear power is very important, but I'm going to put it B. In terms of streamlining NASA, that's kind of way up there as well. I'm going to say it's an A, because if you don't streamline NASA, it just takes too long to do everything. And you want money focused on the engineers, not on the managers and all the management levels. So I'm going to say streamlining NASA is also very important. And in terms of outer exploration, I'd love to see more missions to Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, and so on. But I think you do need nuclear propulsion to have a higher cadence of missions. You do need nuclear propulsion. So it's kind of like tied to nuclear propulsion. So I think those two go together. But I'd love to see more missions to the outer planets. And Mars, I'm kind of I'm very positive about Mars, very bullish about Mars. But It's obviously behind the moon. You've got to focus on the moon first, and then Mars comes later. So I think it's down there at B because there's a lot of tech you have to do as well, and I think nuclear propulsion would definitely help Mars. So I'm going to put it down there as B. And we have what's Christian saying, as no one can own the Earth moon, then the US do not have to be in any race or supreme competition made with China. Yeah, I don't think China considers itself to be in a race with the US. It's just the US who thinks it's in a race. And yeah, but I think definitely the US politicians consider it a race. And so NASA wants to beat China. So yes, so in terms of science, I'm going to put science down here. I don't know, it's like kind of, I'm going to put it as B because I think the human exploration basically drives everything else, and it will drive a lot of science on the moon and in space. So I think we already have a lot of science, and I think Jared wants the universities to spend more money doing science, not NASA doing everything. He doesn't want NASA to have to do everything. Just focus on a few core missions, which is human exploration and really, really difficult stuff like nuclear propulsion, right? Science can be done by universities and other government departments. Of course, NASA will do science, but I don't think it will be a top priority compared to human exploration, for instance. Correct. That's where I am, as you can tell from the background. So yeah, and the moon is way up there. I mean, it's basically where humans are going back to. And this is going to happen in the next couple of years. So it's a very high focus for Jared to get back to the moon, by 2030, because China could be on the moon by 2029, only a few years away. So there's a big push now for Artemis 2 and then Artemis 3. So I think that's high priority. And then commercial space stations, which I'm going to put down here at B, to be honest, because it's not clear whether they're commercially viable at this point. There needs to be a lot more money put into commercial space stations to make them viable. VAST should be launching Haven 1 in 2026. Actually, you can switch back now. VAST should be launching Haven 1 in the first part of 2026, and then you've got Axiom Space, you've got Orbital Reef, you've got Starlab. So there's quite a few commercial space stations. But I think Jared's focus will be getting back to the moon, beating China to the moon, and a big focus on streamlining NASA and on nuclear propulsion and commercializing science as much as possible. Yeah, Artemis 2 is close to flying, and he wants it on the pad and off the pad around the moon as quickly as possible. So we're just months away from Artemis 2. I am concerned about Artemis 2 because of the life support system, and also the batteries. If there's any issue with the batteries, again, once you burn towards the moon, you're not coming back for a week. So any kind of problems could be fatal, to be honest. And Christian is saying, it is obvious that we were back to the moon before we touched down on Mars, boots on the ground, that is, as we already have working robots on Mars. Yeah, definitely the focus is on moon, and you learn a lot on the moon that you then can apply to Mars. So the order makes perfect sense. For instance, dust mitigation, so on building habitats and rovers, a lot of that you can then use towards Mars as well. And I think nuclear propulsion has to advance because you can't have a base on Mars with nuclear propulsion. Solar panels, they produce a lot less power, and you've got the dust storms. So I think I've covered everything. I think I've covered everything I want to do. In terms of what I want to do next week, make myself full screen. There's a new space startup come out of stealth, so I'll cover that. That's my first video. And my second video is going to be, I think it's going to be on Blue Origin. My fourth video on Blue Origin. So I've covered Mark 1, Mark 2. I've covered Cislunar Transporter, the fuel shuttle. I've covered their vision, which is basically go to the moon, use the resources of the moon for propellant, generate solar panels and so on. And the fourth one will be on the new, more powerful nuclear, the 9-4. So like 9 engines on the first stage, 4 on the second stage. That's 71 tons, I believe. And I want to cover that. And also the simplified architecture to put humans on the moon using a Mark 1 lander, which is a cargo lander, but you can make it work with crew. So I want to explain that. So yeah, I'm going to do a Blue Origin video, probably the second video this week. So that's my plans. And Light Switch is saying, don't have the brutal gravity on the moon to get to Mars. Yeah, the gravity, moon's gravity is 1/6 of Earth's, and Mars is, I think, about 1/3. So there's definitely differences between moon and Mars, but there's a lot that's similar as well. So you'd obviously take the technology you developed for the moon and repurpose for Mars. So anyway, thank you for joining and viewing this, and I will see you next week.